on the agenda is our Preservation Awards. And the presenters, Dave Kaplan is going to come and introduce it. And then other presenters will be Carol Lemline, Ruth Ann Lehrer, and Margarita Jarabek. David?
Thank you, Tom. You can hear me. Hello to all, and thank you for joining our annual meeting for what we consider an important acknowledgement of the great contributions that historic preservation projects make to our community. Our committee this year includes Ruth Ann Lehrer, a longtime preservation professional and advocate, Carol Lemline, our previous long-term president and someone very active in our city processes, and Margarita Jarabek, who holds a doctorate in preservation and is a professional architectural historian. She is a non-member of the board, and each year we seek to have people who aren't on the board to join us. And this year, each year we seek out noteworthy places and projects that exemplify the advantages of historic preservation, whether that's rehabilitation or adaptive reuse of a designated monument, memorialization of a historic event, or simply thoughtful stewardship of a historic resource in a neighborhood. And each year we wonder whether we'll be able to find those projects in our city, and yet each year there are incredible examples that we find of historic preservation across all these types of work. And this year we have selected 6 projects for our 2021 Preservation Awards. We won't be able to see to congratulate and hear from the winners this year, but these awards will be featured on the Santa Monica Conservancy website soon. And we greatly appreciate everyone's participation. The first award that we're going to look at, if you want to start this side, these are the 6 awards for tonight. And we'll take a look at now. The first award is 423-429 Ocean. If you can go to that next slide. A Rehabilitation Award. 423-429 Ocean Avenue was originally constructed in 1936 with an added wing in 1950 and is an excellent example of American colonial revival style for a garden apartment complex that faces the ocean in Santa Monica. The property consists of 3 two-story multifamily buildings arranged in a U-shaped configuration, all designed by noted architect William Foster, who also designed the Pilgrim Lutheran Church on Wilshire and the Shangri-La. This property was designated a City of Santa Monica landmark in 2006. Now, over the last decade or so, numerous proposals for the project were put forward that included demolition, partial demolition, and additions to the historic property. And so as a result, long deferred maintenance left the buildings with substantial deterioration of the exterior finishes with the potential to compromise its integrity. But the new owners, Andrew Inignati and Nina Properties, instead began a process of rehabilitation. If you want to go to the next picture, you'll see some of the work that was performed. They went throughout the entire complex and, replaced a delaminated plaster. There's a new wood roof you'll see as you drive by. The courtyard was refurbished, all the decorative features, the rotted wood was replaced, the doorways. So they specifically worked to restore this to its original condition. And it's an excellent example. If you want to go to the next slide, you can see the results of this work. Here it is, couldn't resist seeing it from across the street. It's part of the Ocean Avenue scenery and the examples of its decorative features. And if you go on to the next slide, a few more views to show how it faces the street and what a beautiful courtyard they left us with. So for this, we really appreciate to the team, the Inignati and Nina Properties team, how much that they took care of this property and brought it back. So for our second award, I'd like to introduce our next presenter, I believe is Carol, for our next project.
Thank you, David. Our second award goes to Belmar History and Art. It's a cultural resource award commemorating the early African-American neighborhoods of Santa Monica and the contributions of their residents to the city. The first African-Americans settled in Santa Monica in the late 19th century. Many settled in the Belmar Triangle, an area now occupied by the Civic Center, as well as the neighborhood around Phillips Chapel, Christian Methodist Episcopal Church at 4th and Bay Streets. As the city grew, this thriving African-American community was displaced by explicit or more subtle discriminatory practices taking place in our city. The Belmar neighborhood was finally demolished for redevelopment in the 1950s in order to make way for the Civic Auditorium. The outdoor exhibition, an example of which you see here, encircles the new sports field at Pico Boulevard and 4th Street. It features a bright red sculptural artwork, a resurrection in 4 stanzas, a commemoration of shotgun houses designed by social practice artist April Banks, visible in the background of our photograph, and the interpretive story panels based on the work of historian Allison Rose Jefferson. These are described in a site guide published in English and Spanish, and curricular materials were also developed. A list of project participants, including the Community Advisory Committee, the coordinator of the Curriculum Development Program, and members of the city staff, are shown at left. Next slide, please. In the site guide, which can be downloaded from the city website, you will find artist renderings of the sculpture, a map of the story panels as they are positioned around the sports field, as well as each of the interpretive panels, all within translations in Spanish. Next slide. Here we show examples of the panels and a map of the notable sites occupied by members of the African American community, ranging from a barber shop on Wilshire Boulevard on the north to Southern Ocean Park, and going east to 19th Street, with the heaviest concentration near the former location of Belmar Place at the center. This project was inspired in part by the Coastal Commission's initiative to integrate the principles of environmental justice, equality, and social equity into the coastal zone. It was funded through the city's Percent for Art program. We congratulate all who participated in this remarkable project, which has brought us awareness of the forgotten history of this community. Our next presenter is Ruth Ann Lehrer.
And we will be presenting a restoration award to the Mendota block. Here it is, and let me define restoration. Restoration is the act of bringing a building back to its original condition, design, and materials, shedding past alterations and restoring the historic authenticity of the building as it looked when it was first built. And that is what has happened here. This distinctive early 20th century commercial building has shed its old skin and emerged like a butterfly from a cocoon, following an extensive restoration by owner Redcar Properties, project manager Amir Mikhail, contractor BLC Building Restoration, and historic preservation consultant GPA. The building was designated as a landmark in 2014 as a rare survivor of early commercial architecture on Main Street dating back to 1913, and for its association with artist James Turrell, who conducted his early experiments using light as a medium when he owned the building from 1966 to 1974. Next slide, please. The picture at the lower left shows what the building looked like for many years, a red brick building with an ornate cornice and awnings framing the Starbucks. Redcar purchased the building in 2018 and commissioned a historic preservation assessment. The result led to the removal of its false historical elements and recovery of its true historical character. The fake cornice was removed, which is shown in the center panel, upper center panel. The layers of red-brown paint, many layers, were stripped away. You can see the paint removal in process. And the windows were taken out and original windows were restored. The stucco that covered the ground floor piers was also removed. In the upper right shows what the picture looked like when it was owned by James Terrell. So as you can see, it's gone through many incarnations. Next slide. The paint removal revealed very unique brick colors: gray, pale gray, accented with tan. The tan bricks create a distinctive architectural pattern and define the building elements. The windows are now double-hung wood sash, replicating the originals. Wood storefronts were restored, as well as the historic door. The work was based upon historical research and photographs. The anchor bolts and plates, which you can see, and it's unfortunate that they're there, but they're there because the building required structural stabilization as an unreinforced masonry building early on, and they simply could not be removed without damaging the building structure. So there they are, they're part of the history of the building. This project exemplifies how the quest for historic authenticity can be successful and make a great contribution to historic Main Street. Thank you so much to the project team. And now the next presenter will be Margarita Jerbeck.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to have the honor of presenting this Rehabilitation Award to 1305 2nd Street, the Rehabilitation Project. Rehabilitation is defined as preservation that restores a building to its historic appearance while allowing for its adaptive reuse. In this project, the building was rehabilitated for new use as creative office space. The architecturally distinctive Hotel Hart Mar Vista Hotel and Apartments was constructed in 1914 by Broadway Construction Company of Los Angeles. After over 100 years, the existing Renaissance Revival, buff-colored, gold-speckled brick U-shaped building was still strongly conveyed its significance in early 20th century development of Santa Monica as a resort community and was designated a landmark on December 14th, 2009. The goal of the project was to adaptively reuse the former Mar Vista Hotel and Apartments building and convert it to creative office space. The project owner is Wilshire Skyline and King's Arch, a joint venture. The architect was Monet Ristakian with KFA Architecture, and the historic architect was Robert Chattel. DSN Group Incorporated was the general contractor, and the historic preservation contractor was Spectra Company. Next slide. Over the course of the building's lifetime, there were relatively few changes to the exterior, allowing the property to retain substantial architectural integrity. However, its unreinforced masonry construction, along with long deferred maintenance, resulted in the need for substantial rehabilitation. Major challenges to achieving the desired project outcome were in part due to its unreinforced masonry construction and the large scope of work and the attention to detail required. For example, many of the 177 original wood-framed windows were cracked, broken, or missing original float glass, and wood frames had broken or rotted away. Due to the landmark designation of the property, the project goals included comprehensive rehabilitation in which the exterior primary elevations were retained and repaired and the character-defining elements carefully preserved. The speckled brick masonry construction is a character-defining feature, and its rehabilitation was done in the gentlest means possible, including the cleaning and repointing of the brick and the careful maintenance of the historic ghost sign on the east facade. Next slide. A paint analysis was conducted and used to determine the color of the decorative metal elements on the cornice, fire escapes, as well as the window frames, rooftop elements, balcony rails, and columns. The decorative metal cornice at the top of the perimeter of the building was repaired where damaged, and missing elements such as the beautifully detailed corbels, brackets, and lions heads were reconstructed in kind to match the existing. The historic courtyard was missing 2 planters that were rebuilt to match the original footprint. The original courtyard scored concrete was cracked and missing in areas, and the remaining planters had evidence of alterations inconsistent with the historic plans. The concrete courtyard entry and planters were replaced in kind to match the existing. A new entry gate was added for security, The previously derelict and unusable rooftop penthouse was upgraded and brought into serviceable use as a building amenity. New site improvements included a resurfaced parking lot with new site fencing and vehicular gates, new trash enclosures, a new landscape surrounding the parking lot. The building was given a much-needed seismic retrofit to ensure the longevity of the building while providing safety for future occupants. New plumbing, electrical, and mechanical systems, as well as fire life safety and accessibility systems were also installed, ensuring the project meets modern day occupant comfort and safety standards while respecting the architectural history and significance of the building. Personally, I've always loved this building, and I'm truly delighted that it has been brought back to life and its beauty so carefully restored. Now I'd like to turn the awards presentation over to Ruth Ann Lehrer.
Thanks, Margarita. I love the building too. So the next presentation we have is a Rehabilitation Award for 2518 to 2522B 4th Street. And the project team is listed on the slide. And we thank them for their great work. This Spanish colonial triplex, constructed in 1936, came to the Conservancy's attention in 2018 because a demolition application had been filed. We were scared. At the Conservancy's urging, it was designated as a structure of merit and subsequently was incorporated into the 4th Street Corner Historic District as an anchor building. At that time, the basement unit was uninhabitable. Exterior stucco cladding had been partially removed to inspect the structural problems, and the building suffered from long-term deferred maintenance. XYZ Rent, a company that rehabilitates rental properties, has done a comprehensive and excellent rehabilitation job, giving the building new life. A major challenge was structural stabilization, replacing the foundation and extensive dry wood rot. This was accomplished, and the exterior stucco was replaced to match the historic material. The plumbing and electrical systems were replaced and repairs made inside and out. 3 feet were added to the basement unit to make it habitable, and it was thoroughly rehabilitated. Overgrown, can you turn the next one, please? Next slide. This group of photos shows the rehabilitation underway. I wanted to point out in the center photo the overgrown shrubs in front, which were obscuring the picture windows, which are lovely, and they were removed. All work was done to faithfully match the historic materials and design, including paint colors. Rehabilitation of the rear structure with garages and dwelling units was also undertaken. The rehabilitation work took 2 years to complete. Next slide. I think maybe this is our last slide, yeah. So here is the completed project, the basement unit at the lower left, and inside, as you can see, all the improvements have been made. And now the building makes a beautiful contribution to the neighborhood. XYZ Rent owns other properties in the 4th Street Corner District. So now, if this is a preview of their successful efforts in rehabilitation, we look forward to seeing other projects which will come to fruition, hopefully, in the coming years. Thank you so much for your excellent work, and congratulations on your award. And the last speaker, I believe, is Carol Lemline. Carol.
Yes, I'm delighted to present the Stewardship Award to Kathy Solomon and Bob Birchman for their ongoing rehabilitation of their 1912 home at 10th and Maple. This is one of the few craftsman homes in Sunset Park. Next slide. When they purchased the home in 1997, it looked quite different, as shown in the somewhat faded photo in the upper left. The new owners knew they had work to do to rehabilitate the home, but they were surprised to be given undated photos, historic photos, showing the many changes over the years, not the least of which was the fact that the blue painted stucco exterior was once shingled. Next slide, please. Inspired by the photos and undeterred by seemingly insurmountable challenges, they removed the stucco encasing the original shingles and rebuilt the porch stairs and pillars in their original locations. They restored the original front door, salvaged most of the existing shingles, replacing them with like shingles where they could not, and where possible, retained the original windows. More recent work, including rebuilding the front steps going down to the sidewalk level, where they meet the original retaining walls, as you can see in the lower left. By comparison, the interior was relatively intact. Many of the historic light fixtures and chandeliers were found in various places around the house. They were repaired and reinstalled. Bob, an expert in decorative painting, has created unique painted decoration for several of the rooms. We congratulate Bob and Kathy for their creative rehabilitation of 1001 Maple, a unique home which is very much in the spirit of the craftsman aesthetic. And that concludes our preservation awards.
Thank you, Carol, and the whole team. This is quite an effort that they put in each year in evaluating these projects. And next year, we look forward to be able to have the awards given in person and the owners and the project teams to speak. As mentioned earlier, the awards will go up on our website. Additionally, there'll be an insert in our print newsletter coming out in June that'll feature them, and award certificates will be made available for the awardees. So thanks to all the awardees for their wonderful work in saving and improving these properties. It's an inspiration to us in the community.